Hello and welcome back to another festive coding session with Mr. Jacob. Today we are back in our Advent of Languages, where we try to implement each day of the 24 days until Christmas in this month of December, the same thing in another language, essentially something that prints an ASCII Christmas tree like that into the console. And today's language will be JavaScript. So let's go ahead and implement something in JavaScript. So let's create our directory 02 JavaScript. And I have actually a Node.js installed on this system here, which we can use for that. So I guess we will just jump in and open this up in a Visual Studio. Okay, let's enable our usual Zen mode here, and let's, I guess, create a file called maybe something like hello Christmas, or maybe hello Xmas, Christmas.js there, and let's make it a lot bigger. And so now let's see. How would we call this function? Actually, maybe we would call it function drawTree or something like that. I guess that would be a nice thing. So we can define this function and we call it directly down here just to invoke it. In the Rust thingy, we already figured kind of out the dimensions of this tree. So let's get back here and let's take this README that we already had and copy out this tree here again as kind of a blueprint of what we want to do here, so that we can actually have a visual aid of what we need to print in order to make this work. So we figured out that we can actually draw this in groups. So in JavaScript, we have something like const instead of only let, for example, in Rust, where we can define that we have actually really a value that is a constant. So we can tell the system that we have these groups of 3 here, or maybe today we are feeling fancy and doing 4, I don't know. Let's see. And we need another function here, which is something like draw group. And as we figured out, we need 2 information. We need the current group, so something like n, and we need the maximum of groups, something like, for example, max group. So or maybe the len of the groups, so the group len. What's the maximum of groups that we want to print here? And in JavaScript, actually, because it's a dynamically and weakly typed language, we actually don't have types, as you can see, in comparison to TypeScript. Maybe this will be another part of this series as well. We will see. I don't know yet, actually, because I have not decided on all of the languages that we will be doing. And what we need to do here is we need to draw somehow a group which consists always of the slash and the backslash and the spaces in between. And the spaces in between get bigger from line to line, starting with each group, and start with the number times 2 of the group. So this is group 0, so we start with 0 times 2 spaces. Then we have 1 times 2 spaces, so 2. And the next one is group 1, which starts with 1 times 2 spaces and then gets to 2 times 2 spaces, so 4, and so on and so forth. So what we need to do what we need to do here is we need to somehow draw this. So what we want to do is we want to draw something to the console. In JavaScript, we do this with console log, for example, if we are not directly writing to something like std out. However, console log would be a little bit neater because it would work in the browser as well. So what we want actually to draw here is using a so-called template string, which allows us to interpolate parts of this string, is a slash and a backslash. And we actually need the spacing sort of in between. So let's do something like inner spacing here, which simply tells the system to interpolate this part with the contents of the inner spacing variable. So I need now to kind of fill inner spacing with something. And JavaScript, in contrast to Rust, which we had last session, does not have this neat little thing where we can actually format or pad something within the formatting string itself. So what we need here is some sort of padded string. So what we want is something like pad, for example, and we want actually to pad kind of with a space maybe, and we want, in this case, n times 2. However, and this should actually be quite obvious, there shouldn't be any pad function. Actually, this should fail. Let's maybe try and call this, because JavaScript doesn't have a built-in pad function, which makes this a little bit strange. However, yeah, it's kind of a call to unknown. I would have expected this to fail. However, I've not written real JavaScript or simple JavaScript in a long time. I'm usually only doing TypeScript, actually, so I don't know if this actually is something that will be identified by Visual Studio Code. It seems not. So the problem here is the following. If I do something like for let I equal 0 to I until it reaches the groups count, and let's increment that. This is actually something that is quite common in JavaScript, like it is in, for example, C. It's the more or less same syntax. We are iterating over I. And then we want to draw the group, and we simply tell it the I, and we give it the groups as a lens. So let's do that. And let's then call this function, or this script, better said. So let's do that. And let's do node hello Xmas. And yeah, as we can see here, we get a reference error because pad is not defined. And that is something that we need to keep in mind. JavaScript doesn't have something like pad built in, so we need to kind of build it. And we can do this either using a usual function, something like this we could do here, and tell it like something like character or input and length or something like that. And then we could do something that returns that, or we could use, for example, an arrow function. And I would like to use an arrow function, actually, which is another kind of syntax defining a function in JavaScript that has a little bit of a different semantic. However, it's more or less the same, where we can use a function as an expression, which is a nice little feature in JavaScript. And we assign this to the variable pad. And this is a function expression. Actually, every function is an expression. So I could actually do something like const pad equals function, and then go here and tell it that we want something here like this. It would work as well because a function is an expression. However, this is a neat little syntax, and there are even coding styles where only those kind of functions are used. So let's use it for pad. We can actually do something interesting here, because we can take the input string, and there is a repeat function on strings, which we can use to repeat a string a couple of times. And if we do it like that, we can even remove these curly braces there, and now everything that actually is created here, so what this call here, this last statement creates, is actually then returned from this function. So now we have a pad function, actually, which is quite nice. So let's finish up our draw group by copying those two lines and changing the inner spacing here, because we figured out that for the second line, it actually needs to be one more with the spacing. However, what we kind of see here directly is we cannot redeclare a block scope variable called inner spacing, because we said it should be constant, which kind of makes sense. So what we can do actually is now we can kind of inline this padding code here into the format string part of the JavaScript, because if we are using a template literal like this, we can actually embed any JavaScript expression in here, and it will simply be evaluated and put at this point into the string. So we can do the same thing above here, and we don't have this inner spacing problem anymore. So you get used to actually how this sometimes is written, or how it's read actually, and you get used to how this actually works out. On the other hand, we could have, of course, made this variable not constant, but changeable by using a let and then simply updating it, or we could have used another name for the variable, or we could have put it into another block scope. There are a lot of different ways to solve this problem, actually, but I think inlining this is a quite neat little thing. So it's neat to know that in this template strings, actually, you can have arbitrary JavaScript expression, which is then evaluated. So let's quickly see if actually our thingy here, our tree, is more or less rendered correctly. It will not be perfectly correct because we haven't implemented the centering part yet. However, it kind of works out as intended. So now we need to have spaces before here. And we, if we take a look here, we see that those spaces are always exactly the n actually that is there. So we need 3 spaces here, or it's the inverse n actually. So the 0th group needs actually the count of group spaces minus the maximum group number that we will need in the end here minus the group name itself. So what we need to do here, we figured this out the last time in the Rust thingy as well. We need a spacing before here. We are doing it the same way. So we are using our pad function again, and we are padding with a space again. Maybe we could actually change this to make it a little bit more readable, to have the input as the second argument, and then do something like, or not even, we don't even actually need the input at all, do we? We can simply do a space there. So we pad with length, and so we can change this and we can remove this, and this makes it actually a little bit more readable. So what we want here is we want a padding as well, and what we want here is we want actually the len minus the n, and here we want the same thing but with the length minus n minus 1, because we are 1 further down, which means actually that we need to take this more spacing into account, and as we have this spacing more there, we need 1 less space on the left side. So now actually the first part of the tree should already be printed, and as you can see, it even is bigger than our last tree because it now has 4 groups instead of 3. And now we need this this part down here, which actually ends kind of the tree. So yeah, let's draw that, I guess, which we can simply draw by using console log again, and it is simply a repetition of the minus characters. So we can use our repeat function, which is defined on strings actually, as we have already seen, and it is actually exactly the amount always as groups. So this thing will always be as wide as we have groups here, but +2, because we need to account for the outer the outer characters here. So let's try if this is actually correct, and it is not. Oh, we need to, yeah, we need to multiply. Come on, multiply the groups by 2, because of course we need to take into account that we need to print this more than to the half actually. So there we go. So now we just need the trunk, and I guess we can do that here as well. So we do console log, and we do first of all a template string again, which is actually in backticks. So the string character for template strings in JavaScript is backticks. So we use that and do something like a padding again. And what we need now is we need the groups amount of padding, and then we put the 2 trunk signs there at the end. And now we should actually have our tree. And if we now put this into our own function, like function draw trunk, and we put this in there, and we do it like more or less 2 times maybe, and we say here draw trunk. There we go. Now we could actually see that groups is not defined. Okay, yeah, of course, because we need to of course take this. So what we need to do here is we need some sort of spacing, and this would be spacing, and this would be spacing, because we need this information when calling the function. And now we can run our application again, our script here. And as you can see, now we have a nice, neat little Christmas tree. And to make it a little bit neater than the last time, we can even add some sort of little Christmas ornaments there by simply going ahead and having here in our pet function, maybe making this a little bit more making this a little bit different by copying it quickly and calling it tree pad or something like that, where we actually differentiate it, that we want the inner part of this to be a little bit different than the outer part of the spacing. So like we could do here tree pad, for example, and here tree pad as well. And if we now go ahead and change this method a little bit, to not use the repeat function anymore, but to use quickly something like a loop here. So as long as we haven't yet reached the length, we want plus plus, and in this case we want to create our string, which we have to define here before. So let's call this padding and do here create it as an empty string. And now we go ahead and simply say that if math.random is, let's say, less than 0. I've no idea, 1. So with a 10% chance, we will see if this is actually enough. We will add an ornament there. So we will do padding plus equals, and that's actually a way how we can actually put strings together in JavaScript. We can simply concatenate them like that. We will, for example, put an ornament in there, and else we will simply do padding plus equals space. So now if we do this, let's have a run at it, and hopefully we should have some ornaments there. Okay, no, we do get undefined. What did I do wrong here? And as you can already see, this is a problem with normal JavaScript, that you have kind of a little bit of a problem, as it might not really be defined like, yeah, exactly. And the problem is that I did not return the padding here actually. So undefined is returned as a default. So we will see, yeah, okay, so we have one ornament there. Now we have a couple more ornaments. Yeah, it's randomness. So however, this is actually kind of nice. It's a little bit more festive than the last one. So I hope you enjoyed this second day on the Advent of Languages, where we create a Christmas ASCII tree every day in the 24th days of December in another language. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you tomorrow in the next one. So see you. Bye.